Welcome everybody to Near Mint Condition,
the home of collected editions.
I'm the Uncanny Omar.
And Astonishing Melanie.
And together we're going to do an overview of these hardcovers from
Dark Horse. Stay tuned. Welcome back. Let's delve into these Dark Horse books. Thank you so much to Dark Horse for sending us these review copies.
So each one of these books has already been released as of this video, and all of these happen to be hardcovers. They're all different sizes. And the other thing I was going to say is there is going to be an overview of some of the trade paperbacks that they've also released recently. So, thanks to my wonderful, beautiful assistant, she is going to be talking about a couple of these.
I get the Neil Gaiman ones.
Oh yeah, that's right. I didn't even think about that. Very first book I'm going to kick it off with is Gunfighter. This is the EC Archives. So this book here retails for $49.99, and it does have a dust jacket, like all the EC Archive hardcovers. So this is a hardcover. I know they've been releasing them. Here's your dust jacket. It's the exact same image underneath the dust jacket on the spine and then on the back of the book. So I guess you don't need to keep the dust jacket if you don't want to. What kind of monster does that? But here's some awesome images from the book there on the end paper. And Gunfighter, Volume 1, Issues 5 through 9. Now, you may be wondering why it's Issues 5 through 9 on a Volume 1. Well, that was because it was renamed. It's what EC Comics used to do. As a matter of fact, we're only going to get one more volume of this, and then it will become the Haunt of Fear. And that's what this book was later renamed. When things didn't work, they just revamped pretty much the internal artwork with the stories they were telling and gave you a new title. I cannot remember what the original title for this was, but it wasn't a Western. You do have an introduction here by Grant Gaiman and a foreword by Jimmy Palmiotti. So here is your table of contents. Now, one very important thing to note here is the colors. I know there have been people that have had issues with the colors. Others don't mind a modernization of colors. But there is a very important note here that, talking about the coloring, that most of the original coloring was done by Marie Severin. And the stories have been digitally colorized now, and they're trying to capture that feel of Marie's colors, but just modernizing it. That's all they're trying to do. Now, the other interesting thing to note is, of course, the foreword by Jimmy Palmiotti. I think he puts it best that these are stories and products of their time. When talking about the Native American characters that appear through here, of course, they're seen in a bad light because that's the way Western stories were told. And, I mean, it's an awesome foreword talking about history, but why we must preserve history without changing it. And if this is the way they were written, then you could kind of get a glimpse as to the way people thought back then, or what they needed to escape the reality of their world. And I thought that was a really interesting and powerful introduction, because we always talk about when it comes to older comics, there's always a way to handle it properly and a way to not handle it properly. The way to handle it properly, in my personal opinion, is to just put a stamp on it or a little forward explaining that this book is a product of its time. Some things are completely not the same way as they used to be. Portrayals of characters. Dark Horse has done the same thing for years with a lot of their manga translations, especially when it came to the artwork and portrayals of Africans in Osamu Tezuka's manga. And then in here, of course, we're talking about Native Americans. So there is a lot of that in here, a lot of stereotypes, and pretty much what you would see in an old Western. Now, don't expect things in here like Jonah Hex and stuff like that, because these are just straight up Western stories. And I'm not trying to diminish the stories you're going to find in here, because you're going to find artwork in here by Graham Ingalls and Johnny Craig and Al Feldstein, just to name a few of the creators. As a matter of fact, in the table of contents here, most of the time they try to give credit to the writers and artists, but sometimes they're unknown. Like, the writer of Death by Mistake is unknown. And it's one of those things you see very common in collections, whether it's Marvel or DC comics or something like this from the EC archives. There, sometimes, you know, things get lost through the passage of time. So the stories in here I found interesting. They're okay. They're not the greatest Westerns. This one here is The Buckskin Kid, about a baby that is taken from his family after his family's slaughtered by a Native American attack, and they raise him, and they call him White Raven. So it's Johnny Raven. And what's interesting about this anthology, so each issue, there's only 5 issues collected in here. Each issue has 4 different stories, and then a little prose, like 2-page prose. What the... Okay, so I wasn't expecting to find a Moon Girl story in here. So Moon Girl is an alien, a superhero. That's what she is. So what the hell? I know she had her own comic, but I wasn't expecting to find her here hanging out with Prince there. So I guess it takes place during the Western time. I don't know. I found that interesting. It's not the only one in here. But most of the stories, like you're going to find in Tales from the Crypt or Weird Science or Shock and Suspense stories, are anthologies. These anthologies through the Gunfighter are unique because not only do you have Gunfighter, this character that right here that goes from town to town, he appeared in the previous volume, he'll appear in the next few volumes, so it's an ongoing story with him, but also the Buckskin Kid. Moon Girl appears for a couple of issues before I guess she went on to do her own comic book. So I thought that was interesting because most of the time these stories are not connected. All you need is just one comic. And I mean, that was the beauty of getting a comic at the newsstand back then. You didn't need to read anything else. It was kind of one and done. But there are 176 pages in this particular collection. This is what the artwork looks like. There's really no extras in the back. They don't really put extras in the back. They do put ads for their other EC collections here. And again, this is Gunfighter. Thrilling Stories of the West.
First off, Chivalry by Neil Gaiman, a story he did years ago, and Colleen Doran, who works quite often with him, I would say, added her artistic abilities to the story. And look at this gorgeous medieval scroll-looking ornate writing thing for this short story that's full of dry humor. Mrs. Whitaker found the Holy Grail. It was under a fur coat. Now, Mrs. Whitaker likes to visit the thrift shop, and she just happens to buy the Holy Grail. She takes it home, spruces it up, she talks to her friends, you know, everything's pretty normal until Sir Galahad shows up because he is after the Holy Grail. Take a look at these colors. He is gorgeous. This is what I mentioned in my review that is not out yet. Hopefully it will be Friday. A more in-depth overview of this book. But, like, this right here is so pretty. I mean, that's just a perfect holy light on his holy expression. And wow, just really impressed. And yet a little bit of, like, cartoony Ness added in, like, right here. Like, he's like, I don't know what to do myself. He keeps bringing her gifts, and she keeps denying him because she's like, no, I'm going to keep the Grail. It looks good on the fridge, on the mantelpiece. So don't want to give it away, but I love the ending. In fact, that's why I made a video about comparing her and the old lady in Once and Future, that I both respect them for different reasons. So there is no slipcover. It is sewn binding. Let's open that up. And I love these end sheets. They're pretty. They look nice on the mantelpiece. It is 72 pages, retails for $19.99. It's a great deal. I mean, look at that beautiful sketch. So yes, we have the sketchbook as an extra in the back.
And something we do like to do on the channel is to show the spines of all the books. So here they are all together. Don't forget to smash that like button, subscribe, ring that bell for notifications. All right, let's keep going. Next up is Lady Baltimore, the Witch Queens. So again, this is Mignola. It's not part of the Hellboy universe. This is known as the Outerverse universe. So this ties into, of course, the Lord Baltimore story, which is just Baltimore, and the Joe Golem stuff. And the name, Lady Baltimore. Thing that stood out for me in this, though, is Bridget Connell's artwork. It is written by Mike Mignola and Christopher Golden. But I really like Bridget's artwork. I think it's really unique and stands out, yet has that flair of Mignola that you need. I think whether it's Dave Stewart or whomever doing the colors, there's something that always ties all these type of stories together. And you're going to be looking at a Mignola book whenever you see the cover. But this is Lady Baltimore. And if you're asking, does this have anything to do with Lord Baltimore? Yes, it does. This takes place years after the big fight with the Red King, after something happens towards the end of that. And you have the character of Sophia Volk, who is now living, who was in the original Baltimore story, and she has ties to Lord Baltimore. You can find out for yourself by reading the 2 omnis that have been released of that series. But this takes place years after that, where the world is still going to hell. So she has her own team that she puts together to fight witches. And that's pretty much it. I mean, I find it interesting that this is Sophia Volk, right? She was a character in the original Baltimore series, and now she's taking on the name Lady Baltimore. Now, if you read the original Baltimore series, you know that there are things that, okay, I can see why she took on the name and the sword, but interesting that they went that particular route with the character. The book is a hardcover. It collects all 5 issues of the miniseries. And this one here retails for $29.99. And it has 144 pages. It is the size of the hardcovers, like the BPRD hardcover. So it's standard size. The extras in the back, of course, because they always have extras, show character designs. And not just character designs, but little information about each of the characters. So it's not just a character study for the artist. There are some things I have to skip over because boobies and YouTube, for some reason, they don't like it. I like this, though. This is the original ideas for the different covers that we're going to use. And then this piece right here, which is also found at the very beginning. Right there. So, Volume 1, I'm not sure if there's going to be more. I don't know if there's a new ongoing series. It is an emboss Lady Baltimore, the Witch Queens right there, as well as on the spine. Forgot to mention that. And nothing on the back.
Norse Mythology Volume 2 by Neil Gaiman, and multiple artists such as Buckingham and Showman and Jarrell and various others. We've got a slipcover for this, a dust jacket, and that has like runes on it, and you can see on the front here that, carefully remove it, we've got Thor's hammer. Manure, that's how I say it, and I'm sticking to my guns. It's 152 pages, retails for $29.99. Okay, the book by Neil Gaiman, the prose book, is just fantastic, and that's why I compared it to the first volume of this, was it a year or two ago, with a review video, so check that out if you're interested in this. Okay, this first story, before I get into the premise of what all this is, besides, Norse mythology, surely that's Neil Gaiman, right? Like, that has to be him. He kind of looks like Sandman, who Neil Gaiman kind of looks like Sandman, so I'm thinking this is the poet at the beginning and the end of this story. Here, let me find him. Is supposed to be Neil Gaiman getting... Yeah, at the beginning and end of this story, Neil Gaiman's supposed to be this poet up there that people are like, I don't know about this guy's abilities, according to what Odin did as an eagle. But anyway, so in Norse mythology, we have, how many? I think 3 stories. 1, 2, 3, 4 stories adapted and told in just kind of Neil Gaiman's voice, adding his own mood and tone to it. But now that we have it in graphic novel format, we get the artists adding in their interpretation of what with these guys, dwarves or goblins, their facial expressions would be as they wake up and find themselves tied together. The first story is about how I like that, how the god of poetry died and was made into a mead that granted anybody who drank it the ability to write good poetry. In the second one, Odin and Loki are just, off traveling the world because traveling Midgard, and they pick up this kid who can run really fast, and they meet this giant, and they're going to like the castle of giants, and then they get these contests, and they have to prove themselves, and it just keeps going and going, like somebody's just telling a story in a stream of consciousness format, and I like it. But then you find out, like, oh, these tests were really illusions, and then you, no spoilers, just like what the contests really were about. You find out at the end. So here we have Mark Buckingham's art that you may recognize from Fables. And the Apples of Immortality, I'm going to guess her name is pronounced Idun. I'll call her Idun. Idun's got these apples that keeps the gods from growing old, and Loki's like, hey, I'm going to kidnap her because this giant in an eagle form wouldn't let me go. Basically, that's what it is. But then he has to go rescue her again because all the gods are growing old. And I appreciate, and I like all these muted brown colors. However, then when you flip to this, I think I'm more partial to the bright colors. Very fairy-like, right? Like he even kind of looks like a fairy. And Frey is bored. He wants to have something fulfill his life. He finds the woman of his dreams, and then he sacks. He's like, oh, I can never have her. So he sends a servant. He's like, please, please go get her to marry me. And there you have it. Cover gallery in the back. We have the standard edition covers, along with the variant covers, all done by David Mack, you may recognize from Kabuki and Daredevil. This one's really cool, where he's holding up the hammer and it kind of forms like the crotch area. Oh, that's adorable. And then a little bit of a sketchbook.
Now, a part of the Hellboy universe finally is coming together with Lobster Johnson, baby! Omnibus Vol.1. These all have a flat spine on them, by the way, just like the rest of the BPRD hardcovers. Alright, so this is an interesting way to put this particular book together. It reminds me of the way that Mignola decided to map out the Hellboy Omnis, the soft covers. Here's your introduction by Mike Mignola, talking about the character of Lobster Johnson, talking about the name, and you're not going to find out exactly why the name Johnson is there until... Well, you know what? No, you can read it for yourself. I don't think it's going to happen until Volume 2. So the interesting thing about this is that this collects Volumes 2, 3, and 4 of Lobster Johnson, as well as the short story, The Empty Chair. So it kicks off with just this little 8-page story, The Empty Chair. Kind of introduces you to the character of Lobster Johnson with his mark right there that he puts on people's foreheads. And voila, you kind of get to know that, hey, he's against crime. This is a good character. He is fighting crime in the 1930s. He's kind of your pulp hero type of character, like Doc Savage or the Phantom. So the next story here takes place in 1932, I think. Yeah, 1932. And this features a bunch of Native Americans just showing up in the streets and scalping cops. So it's up to Lobster Johnson and his team to take down those Native Americans and whoever is behind them. So this collects the Empty Chair storyline, and this right here is part of the Burning Hand story arc. Satan Smells a Rat, which is just a collection of just different short stories, and then Get the Lobster. And that's Volume 4, or the 4th miniseries of Lobster Johnson. I find that really interesting because they decided to do a chronological collection instead of a published order collection. Now, if you've never read Hellboy and don't know the fate of Lobster Johnson, then I'm not going to say anything. But I guess it makes sense the way that these are being collected. You get to see his early adventures, you get to know the character more, and then by the time you get to the Iron Prometheus, he's a little bit older, more experienced, and now dealing with a little more of the occult. So in here, you're going to see him fighting, like I said, gangsters, and then eventually Nazis. He'll fight a bunch of mummies, and then ends up fighting Kevin Nolan's artwork here. Superb. And Kevin Nolan is no stranger to comics. I loved his stuff in Doctor Strange. But really the standout star of this, whose artwork I just fell in love with during this collection, and I never really noticed because I used to have the trade paperbacks. Although I never did pick up the Satan Smells a Rat, which is a good thing because that thing went long out of print, that trade paperback. But now you can just get it in this format, so that's awesome. Is Tonsi Zonjic. I'm not sure if I'm butchering his name. I probably am. He's not only supplies sometimes the pencils and the inks, but also the colors. I think his artwork is superb in this. It gives it that almost like a feel like it's really printed back in the pulp era. Like you're looking at something like by Alex Toth. I think his art is awesome. I've always felt like that about Kevin Nolan. Now, Kevin Nolan doesn't do too many stories in here. He just has one short story that's collected in the Satan Smells a Rat collection. But one thing you're probably going to notice as I'm flipping through here is the violence, and yes, the Lobster don't give a crap. He will kill villains left and right, gun them down, all for the sake of justice. And yes, towards the end here, he's fighting mummies, and then he fights a bunch of wrestlers. I'm excited to see what they do with the second volume and how that one is mapped, and where they put Iron Prometheus, and what they end it with. If they end it with the way that I think they're going to end it, the story that that's just some damn well thought out mapping. So yes, he is a little bit different. Don't expect to have a lot of supernatural story elements in here like you're going to find in Hellboy. It's a little slower pace. Some people would probably consider this dull. I find it completely awesome. And I can't do this without giving my buddy Chris a shout out. My buddy Chris Heltzel was a huge Lobster Johnson fan, and I'm like, out of all the BPRD, Lobster Johnson is your dude. He's like, Lobster Johnson is badass. He got a tattoo of the claw on his arm. Oh my gosh, this is had to have been about 10 years ago or so. But anyway, I always think of him when I think of Lobster Johnson. I guess he could play him in a movie now. Oh my gosh, I forgot that horrible Hellboy movie. Not the Guillermo del Toro ones, but the new one actually had Thomas Hayden Church playing Lobster Johnson, which I was excited about. They could give me a Lobster Johnson's movie, and that's it. I'd take that. Lots of extras in the back, all that are found in the trade paperback, like sketches and character studies, original artwork, covers by Mike Mignola. And this book retails for $39.99, and it has 448 pages. Did I talk about the cover? I don't think I did. Did I not talk? Yeah, I didn't talk about this. Yeah. So this is all embossed, and there is the claw right there, which is the marking of Lobster Johnson, Volume 1. Like the rest of the BPRD hardcovers, it does have thick, glossy paper. It is sewn binding. There's that eye. And that, as they say, is that.
If you're interested in purchasing these books, don't forget to check out our sponsor,
CheapGraphicNovels.com, your online home for graphic novels and collected editions up to 50% off cover price. They have excellent shipping and prompt and helpful service. Check out their bargain deals for up to 90% off cover price. And don't forget that CGN also takes pre-orders. That way you don't miss out on the hottest releases. And they are currently running a special promotion for you Minties. If you're a first-time customer, after receiving your order confirmation email, reply back to that email and let them know Near Mint Condition sent you their way. They will then apply a free shipping promotional credit to your next order in the US. Cheap Graphic Novels, your source for the hottest books with the kind of deep discount, quality shipping, and customer service that will keep you coming back for more.
That was the content, page count, and build of these books.
So if you're interested in them or have any questions, please leave your questions down below. Let me know if you are picking the entire Hellboy library up in hardcover format and hoping one day that Dark Horse releases or reprints those BPRD hardcovers that are impossible to find these days. Or if you're waiting on Norse Mythology to come out in library edition, I think that would be a really beautiful book once it's all said and done. And yeah, that's it. Everyone, stay healthy and safe out there. Much love.
Stay minty.
And that.